So did you read the History of the World in 100 Objects, and did that become the inspiration for this exercise?
That was a direct inspiration for this. I mean, if you haven't read it, you really should. It's this fantastic book.
Well, say a little more. What got you?
Well, I thought it was really odd to do a radio show about objects. I thought it would be better if you could see them.
The book was originally a radio show, so all he can do is wave his hands and say, "There's this Ashwalian hand axe, and it's about as big as your hand."
But it was just amazing because, normally, I don't know what it's like in America, but normally when we're taught history in the UK, it's just done so quickly. We start with the Egyptians, then you've got the Romans, then you've got Henry VIII, then you've got the Civil War, then you've got World War II, lots of stuff about Hitler, and then history ends. There's nothing else. There's not really any objects or anything. I remember looking through my history book and thinking, but there's stuff about China here, and there's stuff about, are we going to cover this? And we didn't. And so this book, this radio show, they tried to go as wide as possible. And after it finished, I remember thinking, I really want to find out what happens next. They got up to 2011.
That's interesting.
And I thought, so what's the next object going to be? I mean, and of course, this being the British Museum and the BBC, they didn't, that's not their kind of style. But I thought this would be a fantastic project, and so I started a Kickstarter, which back then was kind of very cool and trendy. And
how far back then are we talking?
Oh, that was that was 3 years ago, or 4 years ago. And like all Kickstarters, it was abjectly late in delivering, but it was. Because it was just a lot harder. I mean, it was a lot harder to write than I had expected.
Was putting together these stories, was it you alone with your imagination, or given Kickstarter kind of the crowdsourcing of the funding, did you do any crowdsourcing of the thinking?
I didn't want to share the fun, so I just did it. I just did it myself. But I think that a lot of the objects.
Did you put chunks of it out along the way to sort of see what people did with it?
I did, yeah. When I'd written about 30 of them, I started putting some of them online just to see whether people found it interesting or not. And I really wanted to try and, have it cover as wide an area of subjects as possible because, you talked about how, the visions of the future are usually just dystopia or utopia. And I thought, look, in the future, we're still going to have fashion. We're still going to have religion, we're still going to have cars, and yes, we'll have rocket ships and so on. And all of these things are just as interesting as, what kind of iPhone we'll have.